Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We have on the line Dr. Kien Vuu, who is. Let me just get this straight. He is releasing his second edition of Thrive State, which I'm so pleased and honored to have had the opportunity to work on and to help promote. And I have some stories for you today. And first off, I just want to say, Dr. V, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I love the introduction. There was so much energy in that intro. It's one of the first experience I got to be a part of that. So that was really exciting.
All right, Dr. V. So a lot to share today, a lot to pick your brain on. I mean, I'm really interested in how you built this brand, how you built this superhero look. And for those of you that haven't saw the book cover yet, you'll see it shortly. But first off, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Dr. V, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Dr. V, what mission matters to you?
The mission that matters to me most is having people remember who they really are, of getting them out of their heads and into their heart. And when we can become that version of ourselves, we have optimal health, we have longevity, and we also have peak performance. And that's my mission.
So love bringing mission-based individuals on the line to, share why they do what they do, how they're doing it, and really what we can all learn from that so we all benefit and grow together. I mean, that's the whole point of Mission Matters, is we all want to grow together. So great to have you on. And as I've kind of looked into your background, and I'm kind of really interested to start this by just figuring out, like, what inspired you? So obviously you're a doctor already, you're already, successful, you had your career. What inspired you to build a brand? Because you have a great brand, and I'm always curious, what inspired you to do that?
Well, that's a great question. I think the things that happen to us in life, and for me, it was a little bit of struggle. And that struggle probably leads us to the things that we need to do most, because when we work through the struggles that have been gifted to us, we become a version of ourselves that can help other people do the same. And for me, I was this person who was a little bit lost. I think, as a young child, I wanted to do media, I wanted to do entertainment. I felt like I wanted to have a voice that wanted to share something. I didn't know what yet. And that was as a kid. But as I grew up, everybody said, look, you're an Asian kid in America. You could only be certain things. My mom was like, you could be a doctor, a physician, or an MD. Which one do you want? And so I ended up going to medical school. And I was striving for this life, chasing this life that other people told me would bring me a lot of success. Yeah. And 7 years ago, I was a chief of interventional radiology at my hospital. I was doing tons of really fancy surgeries, became really top notch in my field. But during that time, I was overweight. I was diabetic. I had high blood pressure, and I was on several prescription medications. Me, an MD, giving other people medical advice, actually didn't have the tools to be well himself. And so that took me on a big journey of self-discovery, of learning functional medicine, of learning nutrition, but really remembering who I really am. Because the person in the consciousness that was chasing all of that success was a person that didn't feel like he was loved or enough. And so not only did I learn the nutrition and then all the steps of movement of trying to get back to who I am, but remembering who I really am, that I am already loved, that I'm already safe, and who does that person want to be? And as I stepped into that person, I became a better version of myself. And not only did I lose all the weight, I'm probably in the best shape of my life. Cognitively, I feel like I am the master of my own realm. Yeah. But I've also biologically aged backwards. So the really cool thing is when we step into who we are, our biology gifts us with optimal health, with a long life, and performing at our very, very best. And once I learned that for myself, I said, wow, I know a lot of people who are living in the matrix, living in the life that they told they should be living. And unfortunately, as a doctor now, I realize that causes disease and stress in somebody's body.
Mhm.
And when I realized that, and when I realized that a lot of people were sleeping, I said, I need to share this message with the world. And that's why the brand was started.
Wow. And so I want to go into, of course, the book and the brand, but I want to stick kind of in the early years, maybe just a little bit longer. Because the reason I do this, by the way, is I know there's other individuals out there. So whether they could be doctors, they could be lawyers, they could be these, whatever, really highly, specialized individuals who have, the typical, let's just say, corporate type career or medical career, and they may have something that's pulling at them, that's tugging at them, that they want to do. So it could be building a brand, it could be starting a business, a lot of other things. Like when you kind of went down this path, I'm guessing that it wasn't like everybody just rallies around you and supports you. Like it was probably a little difficult to kind of take those steps. Am I off on this, or was it maybe a little different for you?
It's a little bit of both. When
Mm.
I wanted to start to create my own brand, well, I have to say that the people who are closest to me, like my parents, are going, "What are you doing? You just spent,
That's the
16
ones,
plus
by the way.
years
I was hoping
doing
you'd say
medical
that. That's
training,
the ones.
right?" So they're like, what is he doing? Right. And you certainly also have, well, I was working in a hospital system. I was in a HMO system. Then I went to a private practice group
Yeah.
session. All, I think, very similar to what a corporate life for somebody actually who's doing corporate
Mhm.
doing. Here's the thing, though. When I started to do things off on my own, when I started to actually take the time to do personal development, as I started to share my voice, initially people were like, "What are you doing?" But I have to say that most people who are in those spaces do feel like they're somehow caged,
Mhm.
that they are in this golden cage that, it's offering a 401k or offering so-called security, but they feel like, oh my God, there's something missing in life. And when they see somebody going out and doing something different, I
Mhm.
think a lot of them were like, whoa, I wonder what that would be like. So although I have certain people that initially questioned what I was doing, I think a lot of people started to applaud. He's following something
Yeah.
that not many of us follow, which is their heart and intuition.
Yeah. And I'm glad you share that, because it's also not that, there's going to be people around you. And I don't like using the words like naysayers or anything like that. So these are people that love you, and that many times, like your parents and things like that. And it's just like they want to make sure you're okay. And they're just like, okay, something's out of the normal here. And that's all. And most of the time, I found that people will be supportive pretty much after the fact when they know you're really serious about what you're doing there. I know from my background, I was in finance almost 14 years. And when I decided to kind of build a brand, be in front of a camera, do a podcast, all these other things, people were like, okay, Adam's going crazy, everyone. What's going on? So, but you push through that, right? And then when people see where your heart's at, things can change. And those are, I found many of the times, your biggest supporters. So thank you for sharing that, because my main point in asking you that is I hope to inspire others that are out there that have a dream or have something they want to do. And I like how you said, may feel confined in a cage, whether, that they may not, but either way, if they have something they want to do, a dream of building a brand, a business, like go for it. Right.
Yeah, definitely go for it. And I want people to know that they're not gonna initially know what that is. Initially, it might just feel like, man, I don't know what the next thing is. I just know that right here doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And it'll take some time. And, during the time as I was building this brand, lots of different type of pivots along the way. And I think Miles Davis has a really good quote. He says, man, it takes a really long time to find your voice. When you're so used to living a life that has been gifted to you in terms of, how you should live it, rules that you should be following, as you start to break out of that, it takes some time to remember who you really are.
Fantastic. All right, Dr. V, time for the main event. So Thrive State, second edition released.
Mhm.
For those that maybe didn't catch the first edition, I just have to say, why the second edition? Why now?
Oh, it was such a great question. So the first edition of Thrive State was launched in 2021, right when the pandemic was happening. And, the crux of that book is letting people know that we are all energetic beings, that, energy is neither created nor destroyed. And our cells in our body that make up who we are is constantly listening to the energy that's around it.
Mm.
And so the first book was giving a framework. What are the different energies? What are the different pillars that we have to focus on when we want to tell ourselves how to behave or act? Because many people want to be healthy, they want a long life, they want to perform at their very best. And so every single cell needs to perform at their best. And in order to do so, the cells need the right messages. So in the very first edition, I talked about the 7 categories of things that most affected the energetic messages we give to ourselves. And that's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, our thoughts and mindset, relationships and community, and then finally a sense of purpose. And I dug into the science as to how those 7 things most affect how our DNA gets expressed in our body. And we focus on those 7 things, our ability to live a long time, to perform at our very best, increases and skyrockets. That's what I call the thrive state. When we focus on those 7 things and really be intentional about making choices in our life in those 7 categories, we become what I call in the thrive state. And the thrive state is basically the energy that we feel, that we give to ourselves in every single moment to direct us towards health and longevity. That's the first edition. Why did I launch the second edition? Why now? Well, over the past couple of years, we were in the COVID pandemic, and I had noticed certain things. I still work 1 or 2 days in the hospital. I noticed people coming into the ICU who were really sick. I had my concierge clients who maybe contracted COVID, but they didn't have any symptoms, or they got COVID, were sick for a couple of days, and then they bounced right back. What was the difference? And I started to notice that the people who were in the thrive state was actually able to be more resilient against the people who actually got the virus. They had an immune system that was very resilient towards any invader versus people who were not in the thrive state, what I call the stress state. And so I wanted to just show people that being in the thrive state, particularly as you have any stress in your body, that stress could be stress from work, it could be stress from a pandemic, that if you're in the thrive state, it makes your body more resilient. And so I wanted to share that with people.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I also got a chance to work with corporations. And I saw some corporations that folded, with the pressure of the pandemic, but some organizations just continue to thrive and become a magnet and attracting new talent, no matter what the case was.
Yeah.
What was the difference between those organizations? I also found that organizations that demonstrated a thrive state, that the state that we live in is also contagious to the people around you.
Yeah.
And if we step into that energy of performance, it actually affects the people around you. So not only being in a thrive state affects your own health, but you start to change what is possible for your family, for your team members, and for a larger organization and humanity as a whole. This thing spreads out. And so that was one of the observations I shared. And the very last thing that I wanted to share with people is, I had this very first edition of Thrive State, and notice that just kidding, but there is expanded content. And the one thing that I wanted people to know most is what stops people from getting into the Thrive State. I leave it all in this book here as to how to get into Thrive State, but what stops people? Well, I've studied up on more of the science of what is known as the default mode network. This is a consciousness. This is part of our nervous system that we develop as kids. And as kids, we're basically a sponge for information. We learn things from our parents, from media, from society. We just pick up all this information. And the thing is, this default mode network also is looking for things that can hurt us. This is the autopilot or survival mode of the brain. And it's going to remember our fears, our traumas. We have disempowering stories and limiting beliefs that live in this default mode network. This is old programming. This is programming that you just download when you're a kid. You're going to pick up some good programs. You're going to pick up some bad programs. But this is what most people live their life through, is this programming that they got when they weren't really conscious themselves. And they'll go through their entire life with this program. And when you're trying to do something new and different, what happens is that these limiting beliefs or disempowering stories of I'm not good, I'm not worthy of love, or whatever that might be, when you're trying to do something new, it wants to pull you back down to the consciousness, to the emotions, to the thought, and the same actions of that old program. And unless we are aware of that program, we can't make new conscious choices.
Mm.
So in this book, I have basically a chapter called creating lasting change.
Mm.
And to be able to make lasting change, one, you need to know the old program that's in you, what's driving it. And then you need to see the vision of your future, who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then recognize that when you start to make changes, it's going to feel uncomfortable because your body is so habitualized to think, feel, and act a certain way.
Yeah.
And so in order to make lasting change, one, you have to be aware of the thing that pulls you back. Recognize that when you feel resistance, it's the old program.
Mm.
But if you're aware of that, you're going to, you know what? I feel resistance. I don't want to do this thing, but that's the old program. I know Kien told me that. So how do I make lasting change? Is I just got to make choices that are always aligned with who I want to be, your true self. And once I had that, I have an easy framework for people to use to create lasting change and to really stay in the thrive state.
Mm. So I always like to provide, actionable tips to our audience, especially when I have someone like yourself on the line and we're talking about health. So what are some things that people can do? And obviously, for everybody watching and listening to this, you got to pick up the book. Like that's the first thing, like to get the full framework, to get everything else. Like this is something that's worth your time, worth your attention. But for today, Dr. V, for those that are maybe listening to this, they're driving in their car or, they're at their desk and it popped up on LinkedIn. Like what are some actionable tips or some things they can do now to start to kind of inch their way into the thrive state?
All right. Well, very good. I want to just share a very easy impact framework to creating lasting change in your life. Like I said, your longevity, your health, your performance all comes down to the choices you make in every single moment.
Yeah.
All the choices that you make and the actions you take from those choices create those habits, and the habits create who you are. So if you are overweight, if you're sick, if you're not making the financial success that you want, any of those things come from those habits. That's all there is to it, right? But how do we make better choices when the old part of us wants to pull us down? So in the book, I go through those 7 categories that I just talked about, and we have all these things that you can do. I always recommend doing the easiest things first, the thing that's going to require the least amount of activation energy. But when you're ever confronted with a choice, I want to teach people the framework impact. I am. Okay. Then P is pause. A is have awareness. C is choose. And then finally, T is take action. And let me walk people through it. So anytime you feel like you want to, you get triggered. Either you smell, a bakery of fresh baked bread and danishes, and you want to grab a bite. or you're sitting around, you're watching Netflix, and in your mind you're thinking, I should be running. Or let's say you're in an argument with your spouse and you wanted to just if they said something to you, you just want to yell back at them.
Yeah.
We all know that the actions that we take, either indulging in that bread or not working out or yelling back at your spouse, is not actions we want to take. We usually react, and we usually react from that old programming. Whatever that programming is, we're going to take that trigger, we're going to react. But in order to become the best version of you, the person that you want to be, you have to, number one, know who you want to be. Know your I am. Do you want to be courageous? Do you want to be loving? Do you want to be generous? Do you want to feel wealthy? All these things are within you now. And you could choose to become that version of you if you make that choice. So know your I am. So it's very important to know your values. That's your I am. And whenever you're triggered, pause with the P. You can easily take 10 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth with a long exhale. And with that long exhale, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. You're giving your body a chance to relax. You're giving your body a chance to sort of lessen that trigger that you just felt. Then awareness, which is A. Oh my God, I just got triggered. She said something about me that really wounded something in the past. Okay, I can have awareness there. Or that smell of that fresh bread. Ooh, it really brings up this appetite of wanting to relieve myself of this boredom that I'm in. Have awareness of what's happening. Recognize that maybe it's that old programming that just got triggered. And
Yeah.
choose. Once you have that awareness, you can make a new choice. You can be, I am healthy, so I'm not going to go for the bread. Or I am fit, so I am going to go for a run. Or I
Mm,
am loving, so I don't need to react that way to my spouse. You choose who you want to be, and you
mm,
choose towards your I am, and finally you take action. This is the point where you could take a new action rather than going from this reactive response to a response that is more aligned with who you want to be. And
mhm,
if you remember this impact model, with every single choice that you make throughout the entire day, you get to always choose the person you want to show up as, and you will choose the habits that ultimately you will embody and the
mm.
results that you want in your life.
Oh, that's helpful. That's helpful, and and I feel like it's a great start. And for those that are watching this, I mean, that's just a taste of some of the content you can expect in this book, which I highly recommend picking up. And I got to tell you, so Dr. V, I've promoted a lot of books in my day. I've launched a lot of authors, and when we started working on Thrive State, the second edition, and I'm sharing it with people, I'm just kind of getting there. Couple of things. First off, so my mom, she's just know in Florida, you're popular right now in a bunch of retirement areas because my mom looked at that cover. She's like, "Who's he? He's cute." And I'm like, "What, mom? Come on." Number one, but number two, there's a lot of people reading your book, and I can tell you that even from the first edition. So we were working on the second edition with you, and people were picking up the first edition. They're like, "Well, wait a minute, I don't want to wait for the new release. It's that's coming up in mid-April or early, not at this time in a week or so, April 11th. But they were picking up the other one. They were already reading the other one, and I was already getting feedback. And I can tell you, like, that has never happened when I promote a book. Like, normally somebody doesn't go back, buy all the other books and everything else. So I was like, wow, Dr. V's onto something here. But then when I think about your content and what you're doing, and you're really helping people think about, when you're talking about reversing that clock like you did yourself, and you're giving people the tools and the knowledge for them to be able to do the same themselves. So for me, I was like, man, there's a lot of wins in here, and you're obviously already changing a bunch of lives, and I'm happy to get that message out and to share it with more people. So speaking of sharing it with more people, like, and you mentioned working with corporations. I know you do a lot of speaking. I know you do a lot of other things. Like, how are you getting this message out about Thrive State?
Anywhere when they give me a chance to be able to share this message, this message is just like when you remember who you are, when you were just who you are and just share you. The universe, biology, whatever actually gifts you with
Mm,
optimal health and performance. And I've shared this message. I've been very privileged to be able to share it, on TV, on TV shows like The Doctors, Access Hollywood, Mario Lopez, as a lot of people know, or corporations like Bank of America, Google, Whole Foods, have me come in to be able to remind them
mhm.
that just who they are is absolutely always enough. And it's just been a really honor and privilege to be able to share my message in lots of different avenues and a lot of different platforms. And it's something that I think I can do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely. It's an amazing model. You're helping a lot of people. Is there a coaching portion to this in general? I'm not quite aware.
Well, great question. I
Or is
used to
it
have a
coming down the
concierge.
line if it's not created yet? There's got to be an online program. Come on, people are going to watch this. They're going to run and buy one. Do you have one, or are you creating one?
Absolutely. Well, I have a concierge practice where I work with CEOs, celebrities,
Yeah.
and athletes on performance and longevity. But we're moving more towards a coaching model only so that we could serve more people. And so
Yeah.
we have limited amount of spots for one-on-one, and we're also building a community for more people to be, a part of this work in the future.
Yeah. That's what I see it as. Like Thrive State really is a movement. Like that's community, it's a movement, its ability to be able to help people really around the world, enter that Thrive state and improve their health.
Well, thank you for that. It's a great vision, and I'm glad people are resonating already.
Yeah. Well, Dr. V, I have to tell you, it has been fun having you on the show, getting to learn more about Thrive State, impact. I mean, I'm going to have to rewatch this, write that down, memorize it. I got to do my pauses and my breaths throughout the day when things get crazy over here as well. But for today, what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for the community? And what's next for Thrive State?
Well, that's a great question. People have been following me already. They know that I am engaged to a beautiful woman. Her name is Tiffany Lee. She's beauty stylist, and she's got 100K followers, on her own in her own brand. But we're actually merging our gifts together to be able to really give people the tools and tactics on relationships, on health, and in life, and actually how to amplify your message and brand in the future. And so we're getting this thing going. People could expect that from us. So if you want to belong to the community, or if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, you can go to Instagram at Dr. VMD, spelled out DOCTOR VMD, and DM me community or DM me coaching. And that's where we're headed.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over. And I got to ask the question, if somebody wants to pick up a copy of that book, what do they do?
You could go to Amazon or wherever books are sold. Thrive State, the second edition, launching April 11th. So you want the 411? Pick up the book.
Yeah, and that book has been a #1 bestseller in preventive medicine for going on a week now as of this recording, and I don't see it being, I don't see anybody knocking it off anytime soon. So congrats on that success. Congrats on getting to #1. And for everybody watching this, definitely go pick up a copy of that. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or listening to an episode or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, their content, the reason behind their mission, really what gets them motivated to go out there and to make a difference. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Dr. V, again, pleasure working with you today, and wishing you much more continued success with Thrive State.
I appreciate you, and thanks for having me on.